Paris woke up to an eerie silence. A thick grey fog blanketed the city. It was election day, 2022. The air felt heavy with anticipation. Something was off. You could feel it in your bones. Streets were deserted. Cafes remained closed. Even the pigeons seemed to have taken the day off. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath, waiting for something. But what? The usual bustle of election day was missing. No cheerful voters, no campaign volunteers handing out flyers. Just an unsettling quiet, broken only by the occasional echo of footsteps on cobblestone streets. As polling stations opened their doors, voters trickled in, faces masked, eyes wary. The fog clung to their clothes like a bad omen. Little did they know this was just the beginning of a day that would go down in infamy. The first sign of trouble came with the posters. They appeared overnight, plastered on walls near polling stations, dark, ominous, unlike anything seen before in French elections. The posters bore no party logos, no candidate faces, just cryptic messages. Your vote is worthless, democracy is dead. The truth will be revealed. Who put them up? Nobody knew. Election officials were baffled. Reports started flooding in, similar posters across Paris, then from other cities, Marseille, Lyon, Bordeaux. It was coordinated, but by whom? And to what end? The authorities were caught off guard. Social media exploded with theories. Some blamed far-right groups. Others pointed fingers at foreign interference. Panic began to set in. Voters arrived at polling stations only to be greeted by these sinister messages. The fog seemed to grow thicker. As morning turned to afternoon, a new development. Eyewitnesses reported strange figures, cloaked in black, faces hidden behind masks. They appeared near polling stations, silent, watching. At first it was just a few sightings, then more and more. Soon reports came from all over Paris. The cloaked figures stood motionless, not speaking, not interfering, just present. It was unnerving. Police were called, but by the time they arrived, the figures vanished, melting into the fog, only to reappear elsewhere. It was like a game of whack-a-mole, but with creepy, masked stalkers. Voters were spooked. Some turned back, refusing to enter polling stations. Others defiantly pushed through. The atmosphere was tense, electric, like the calm before a storm, and then the storm hit. It started with a tweet, a seemingly official account announcing early results, impossible results, a landslide victory for an obscure candidate. It spread like wildfire. Within minutes, other accounts joined in, each with different results, contradictory, outlandish, designed to confuse and inflame. And it worked. People took to the streets, angry, confused, demanding answers. The real election officials were overwhelmed. They tried to stem the tide of misinformation, but it was too late. The false results had taken on a life of their own. Reality and fiction blurred. Clashes broke out between supporters of different candidates, between protesters and police. The city descended into chaos. The fog that had blanketed Paris now seemed like a metaphor for the confusion clouding everyone's minds. Section 5. Police struggle to maintain order. Law enforcement was caught off guard. They hadn't prepared for this. How could they? It was unprecedented. They scrambled to respond to contain the spreading unrest. Riot police were deployed. Tear gas filled the air, mixing with the fog, creating a noxious haze. But for every crowd they dispersed, two more formed. The city was a powder keg, and the fuse was lit. Communication breakdown added to the chaos. Police radios jammed, cell networks overloaded. It was as if someone had planned this to maximize confusion, to paralyze the response. As night fell, Paris burned, not literally but metaphorically. The city of light was engulfed in darkness of fear, of anger, of uncertainty. The election, meant to be a celebration of democracy, had become its nightmare. The panic wasn't confined to the streets. It seeped into homes through TV screens, through smartphone notifications. No one knew what to believe, who to trust. Families argued, friends turned on each other. The false results had done their job, sowing discord, dividing people. Even those who normally didn't care about politics were swept up in the frenzy. Shops closed early, metro stations shut down. The city went into lockdown, not by official decree, but out of fear. The streets, earlier filled with protesters, now stood eerily empty, save for the occasional siren. In this vacuum, rumours thrived. Whispers of a coup, of foreign invasion, of the end of democracy, each more outlandish than the last. But in the climate of fear, even the absurd seemed possible. Section 7. Social media fuels the fire. In the digital realm, chaos reigned supreme. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all were battlegrounds. Truth was the first casualty, followed closely by civility. Bots and trolls had a field day, amplifying false claims, creating fake videos, deepfakes of candidates conceding or claiming victory. It was a disinformation orgy and everyone was invited. Fact-checkers worked overtime, but they were fighting a losing battle. For every fake news item they debunked, 10 more sprung up. It was whack-a-mole, but the moles were winning. Even those who prided themselves on media literacy fell victim. The sheer volume of conflicting information was overwhelming. Critical thinking gave way to emotional reactions, fear, anger, confusion, the perfect cocktail for manipulation. Section 8. Government's desperate response. As midnight approached, the government finally responded. The president appeared on national TV, his face grim, his words carefully chosen. He declared a state of emergency, urged calm, promised answers. But it was too little, too late. Trust had evaporated. Many saw the address as part of the conspiracy. Others dismissed it as damage control. The government had lost control of the narrative. Emergency meetings were called, crisis management teams assembled, but they were playing catch-up. The damage was done. The question now was not how to stop it, but how to pick up the pieces. As dawn broke on a new day, Paris was a changed city. The fog had lifted, but the cloud of suspicion remained. The election, meant to be the cornerstone of democracy, had become its biggest threat. Section 9. The truth unveiled. It took weeks of investigation, of speculation, of unrest. But finally, the truth emerged. The election had been targeted by a sophisticated disinformation campaign. Foreign and domestic actors working in tandem. The mysterious posters, the cloaked figures, the false results, all part of an elaborate scheme to undermine faith in democracy, to create chaos. And it had worked, almost too well. Arrests were made, both in France and abroad. Tech companies were grilled for their role in spreading misinformation. Heads rolled in government agencies for their failure to prevent the attack. But the damage was done. Trust in the democratic process was shaken. The true election results, when finally released, were met with skepticism. The legitimacy of the new government was questioned. France had entered a new era of doubt, of division. Section 10. Reflection on democracy's fragility. In the aftermath, France soul-searched. How had this happened? How had one of the world's oldest democracies been brought to its knees by tweets and posters? Experts weighed in on the vulnerability of open societies, on the double-edged sword of technology, on the need for media literacy. But there were no easy answers, no quick fixes. The events of that fateful election day became a cautionary tale, studied in political science classes, analysed by security experts. A stark reminder of democracy's fragility, of the constant vigilance it requires. As France slowly healed, questions lingered. Could it happen again? Could it happen elsewhere? The fog that had blanketed Paris on that election day had lifted, but the future of democracy remained cloudy, uncertain, a work in progress. as perhaps it always had been.